Hello. I'm here in a conversation with Mr. Venu Srinivasan, the chairman of TVS Motor Company. We're here to talk about the book A Silent Revolution, the journey of the Srinivasan Services Trust, which marks 25 years of the journey of this trust in the villages in India. Welcome to the show, Venu. My first question is on the title of the book. Why is it called A Silent Revolution?
Because when we started SST, we did not do any landmark buildings or infrastructure. Well, we started with the minds and hearts of people. And so it is actually stealing into the hearts and minds of people and starting an inner change in them. And therefore, for years, till actually the people started demonstrating new behaviors, hygiene, nutrition, no littering in the village, that you start seeing a change. So the change creeps in on you, and it is not sudden with any dramatic building to show for it or dramatic infrastructure to show for it.
Okay, the book in a way marks a milestone, which is 25 years of the work of SST. And when you read the book, it's clear that the organization's come a long, long way. But what was it like when you started it? And, what was your ambition for SST at that point in time? And how has it evolved?
See, ambitions also evolve. I have never started with a very big picture. I've always started with a horizon and working my way towards the horizon. And the horizon keeps expanding. And as you climb higher, the horizon is even wider. So we started with a small temple. I always said, as in storybooks, it all started with a small temple. So I was invited to this remote village and asked to restore an ancient temple. As I was doing the restoration, it became very clear that the surrounding areas were mired in poverty, and I did not quite grasp the significance of doing a temple if that's going to be surrounded by poverty. So I said a temple is a gem. The gem has to be set in beautiful gold work. And the gold work has to be the village. So I have to change the village to gold in order to have the restored temple become a complete jewel. So that was the idea. I had at that time also gone to Sai Baba, and he always said, love all, serve all. Didn't strike a chord in me. I said, sounds like a tennis score. But as I did this temple, I started understanding why Sai Baba always promoted love all, serve all, and Gram Seva is Ram Seva. So that's how it started. But once it started, my father, grandfather had always believed in the welfare of families and employees of our company. So when we looked at all the employees' families, they lived in the villages around our factories. So I said immediately we must therefore do it in all the villages surrounding our factories as well. And that's how it started with a few villages, I would say between 93 and 96. In 96, it formally became a program, a foundation with the name Srinivasan Services Trust in my father's memory.
So 96 to now, we're in 2021. How do you think SST has changed? How has the model changed, and by how much, and in what way?
First, the change is in scale. I think what started with a few villages is now in 2,500 villages. And therefore, that itself is a huge change. The second thing, I think we wanted to do everything in the village. But after many years, particularly the last 5 years, when we looked back and said, let's have the next vision and mission statement and 5 year plan, we felt we cannot do everything. We do not have the expertise, nor do we have the authority or ability to influence the authority. So we have now focused on what we always focused on, social empowerment through women empowerment. So we still have close to 100,000 women in self-help groups who are really creating change as a catalyst of change. In fact, the active ingredients of change. The second, we continue to support farmers with farmer clubs. So that we continue economic and social development through women and through farmers. The next area we felt was we were taken upon ourselves education, but we felt really we could not influence education beyond a point. So we focused on Anganwadis, Balwadis, and provision of toilets with running water in all schools. We felt that's all that we could do. We are not able to change the teachers and the way the school works.
Mm.
Third, when it came to health, again, we are trying to do too much. So we said, let's focus on supporting the maintenance of all primary health centers in the areas where we operate. So all of them would be painted, cleaned, toilets would be have running waters, the fans would work. So we said that would be a far better thing to do because it would support the local doctors, enthuse them, motivate them to work. Same thing the Anganwadis and Balwadis. We maintain them completely. So that's what we did in health rather than try and say we will improve anemia, we'll improve child mortality. We found that really we are not equipped to do that. Then, when it came to local infrastructure, the other infrastructure that was important was the veterinary clinic. Our livelihoods are based on huge livestock program. That is the major source of income. So again, we completely maintain and support the local veterinary clinic of the government by maintaining it, cleaning it, and providing again toilets and running water. So this is what we do. The other thing that we are focused now is water. We always did, but now much more scientifically with external help on geomapping, geology, where should we have check dams, where should we create reservoirs, how which reservoir should be desilted, and we have spent enormous effort in the last 3 years in creating additional water holding capacity that directly supports farm income and economic progress. Uh, we did afforestation. In fact, we did 12,000 or I don't know how many hectares of afforestation. But now we're focusing on, let's say, a few 100,000 trees every year through social forestry and farmers planting trees on their land. But we have not got any more major afforestation programs after that work in Patayvid.
So, when I read the book, what you've explained is what definitely is happening in those 2,500 villages. But there are villages beyond that, almost, I think, nearly 5,000, in which, or another 2,500 almost, where SST has started, is surveying, is looking at doing some work, is trying to come in and see how they can start working with the villagers, which makes it a somewhat large footprint. But to me, what was really interesting is that a lot of the work that SST does is in trying to change attitudes, which isn't really easy. I mean, how do you change the attitude of people? How do you change the attitude of villages and villages in India which are so diverse? So, how does SST go about doing this?
It's a long process and a process where we had to learn. I learned as much from villages as probably villages learned from me because villages are timeless and the patience and they have intuitive common sense. They're not dumb. And many NGOs fail because we come from the city educated and we said this is what's good for you. But what I learned from the village is that we need to understand the life, we need to understand the environment, We need to understand what are the opportunities, what are the problems, and only then can we create solutions which will be suitable for them and which they will also intuitively buy. So it's a slow process of change. And change starts with yourself. Change does not start with other people. So if I don't change myself, I cannot change them. So I had to change myself to be with them, be one with them, empathize with them, sympathize with them, identify with them before we could do changes. And I think that was the real reason why we succeeded.
And so, if you were to look deeper within you, what is it the one thing that changed? I mean, which was a significant marked shift.
I think the biggest change is that that everybody has a spark of divine in them, irrespective of caste and community and economic status. I think that is the significant change that took place within me. Uh, each of them is a human being. Each of them is a beautiful human being with all their flaws and all their problems. They're just beautiful people there. And I think it really was a remarkable change that came over me because of them.
One of the anecdotes that stayed with me in the book is the story of the dripping tap and how, in a way, that changed SST's approach to community work. I'd love for you to talk about that.
See, when we started working, one day my Japanese teacher of TQM, I still call the traditional word teacher, sensei, he came and he said, Venu-san, your model is give and give. That's easy to do, but not sustainable because companies will go up, companies will go down. There might be periods when you cannot do. So what do you have to have a give and take program.
Then
Then
the
the
question
question
became,
became,
what
what
do
do
we
we
take
take
from
from
poor
poor
people?
people?
And
And
then,
then,
after a
after a
lot
lot
of
of
deep
deep
thought,
thought,
we
we
came
came
to
to
the
the
conclusion
conclusion
what
what
we
we
can
can
take
take
from
from
them
them
is
is
behavioral
behavioral
change,
change,
attitudinal
attitudinal
change,
change,
a
a
new
new
mindset.
mindset.
And
And
the
the
dripping
dripping
tap
tap
illustrates
illustrates
the
the
change
change
in
in
that
that
mindset.
mindset.
We
We
were
were
not
not
going to
going to
go
go
and
and
repair
repair
it,
it,
which
which
was
was
very
very
easy
easy
to
to
do.
do.
We
We
said,
said,
no,
no,
you
you
must
must
contribute,
contribute,
you
you
must
must
take
take
ownership
ownership
of
of
your
your
dripping
dripping
tap,
tap,
and
and
we
we
will
will
support
support
you,
you.
and
And
you
you
must
must
contribute
contribute
to
to
not
not
only
only
the
the
dripping
dripping
tap,
tap,
but
but
every
every
problem
problem
in
in
the
the
village.
village.
There
There
must
must
be
be
a
a
contribution,
contribution,
maybe
maybe
5%,
5%,
15%,
15%,
maybe
maybe
50%,
50%,
depending
depending
on
on
the
the
problem.
problem. And that became a significant difference between SST and any other NGO. Because when we, for example, wanted a forest road, we went to the forest people and said, we will provide you gravel, but we will not provide you labor. And we'll hire a machine if there's a machine, but you will lay the road. And that's how that Javad Hill road was a beautiful small bridle path, became at least a road on which a jeep and a two-wheeler could go. So it became a way of life. And today we believe that they must take ownership. It is their project, it is their lives. And if it is just done for them, it actually takes away from their self esteem. So if you want them to grow as people and grow as society, they must have self-esteem, and that can only come by achieving it yourself. So we become partners in their change and partners in their progress, not
Another thing. Sorry.
not
Um,
donors.
right. Um, Another thing in the book which I found was quite remarkable was this whole idea of turning something, converting waste into something useful, where people look at all the resources they have around them and try and do something linked to their livelihood. But one aspect which is quite remarkable for villages is the garbage collection and segregation, which you sort of don't even find in some of the big cities in the country. So, how did that come about?
Well,
Well,
as
as
far
far
as
as
that
that
is
is
concerned, a
concerned, a
few
few
villages
villages
do
do
it
it
well.
well.
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
everybody
everybody
does
does
it.
it.
Government
Government
also
also
had a
had a
program
program
for
for
vermiculture,
vermiculture,
and
and
therefore
therefore
government
government
provided
provided
empty
empty
space
space
and
and
sheds
sheds
where
where
we
we
could
could
get
get
it
it
done.
done. Second point was when Professor Sudak gave us advice. He said, Venu-san, please don't create new wealth in your country. You waste more than rich countries waste. So convert your waste into wealth first. So we found when we went around, a lot of agricultural output goes waste. So that can be composted. Some of them can be converted into products like banana fiber, like palm leaves. So we started handicraft, we started vermicompost. So it's not only that waste, but all waste. The other important waste actually in dealing with the subject was human waste. Not the excreta of human beings, but people themselves don't do anything with that time. No woman was occupied in the village other than doing daily coolie work if they get jobs. So we started the women's self-help groups, a way of empowering them, but also as economic progress. So process, when he said waste, we started looking at all the waste. Government buildings were not functioning, government programs were not functioning, that's a waste. Uh, the seeds that were bought by farmers were not of poor quality, it was mixed seeds with, let's say, a longer term crop, a medium term crop, a shorter term crop. So some of them would not germinate, some of them would germinate too early or set too early. So we had to buy standard seeds. We found water was wasted, too much water. We found that pesticides were overspraying or underspraying caused waste. So all these fertilizer again, poor application, NPK balance not being there created waste. So we started looking at all waste in the village, not only the physical waste or solid waste or liquid waste.
Um, when you read about SST in the book, what's quite clear and palpable is that it's a different model in that it tries to touch upon all aspects of life in a village, whether it's education, whether it's social empowerment of women, infrastructure, agriculture. A lot of companies, though, when they look at CSR work, think of what can I do really well. For example, can I just get into healthcare? Can I just get into education? Having done this now for 25 years, what is your perspective on what's a really doable and scalable model for a country like India where our problems are so enormous?
See, there are many ways to contribute. I will not take away from anybody else's way or their focus. Some people focus on primary education, some people on women, some people on health. All that is welcome. India can do with a lot of help in the villages. But when we wanted to do, we had limited resources, so we had to innovate. So I would say we made a virtue out of necessity. And the only way we could do it by villagers doing it for themselves, by themselves, of themselves. And Professor Suda gave us this model. We had TQM in the company, total employee involvement. Why can't I have total village involvement, TVI, where every villager is involved in the progress of the village, the farmers through better processes, the women through self-help groups, because women are really the glue that sticks our society together, any society. And empowering them and giving them income goes immediately to nutrition and health and education of the children. The third is the PTA. That the PTAs, everybody should be involved. In the areas where you're working forest, there is forest village committee. Again, the same people. So our villagers and particularly women of a self-help group are involved in all the activities. They support the Anganwadis, Balwadis. So we wanted to become TQM villages from the point of view of total village involvement.
And what if someone were to say, how can a company that sort of works in, say, just one particular area, whether it's healthcare or women's welfare, work with a foundation like SST?
See, first is that when we do a complete mindset change, we win the hearts and minds of people, and therefore, like a digital highway, we have a highway which reaches the hearts and minds of villagers. Now, through that highway, we can send various things. It's a huge pipeline. So I would be delighted to collaborate, work with NGOs which focus on specific areas where we don't have the competence. It could be in primary health, could be in education, it could be any aspect that other people actually do, whether it is pollution, whether it is organic agriculture. So we would be delighted. I think the next phase of SST has to be collaboration. And there are so many good NGOs in India doing such outstanding work that nobody is particularly uh, singularly better than anybody else. And I know, there are the biggest names in India which do it very well, from Tata Trust to Premji Trust, to name a couple. And there are many, many, many more. Uh, so all of them are doing all, and these are the older families, particularly, have done it for generations. So I think we can not only learn from them, but we can collaborate with them.
One final question, Venu, when you look back at more than a century of the TVS group, what is the one thing that is reflected in SST, which is so core to the group as well?
Trust, in one word. We maintain trust with the villagers, and they know that we will be with them through thick and thin. Anytime there's a crisis, whether there's the summer where there's been a terrible shortage of water, or whether there's a storm or hurricane or flood, they know that SST will come, will help them, will work with insurers to get their refunds, will work with banks to get them extra loans, make sure the government helps, whether during the tsunami or whether floods or drought. We will always be there with them through rain and shine.
And the epilogue of the book does mention how even during COVID, SST did work very closely with the villagers to get resources to them.
We did. We provided food. We provided uh, disinfection services, masks, coats. We gave not ventilators, oxygen concentrators. We not only spent a lot of money, but we had the manpower. What SST gave us, the ability to reach out 400 people going and reaching out, although many of them were clearly quarantined because they were above 60, but all the others could actually go out and work with the villagers, educate them, help them, even on vaccination, vaccine hesitancy. We go out and tell them, you must vaccinate, it's good for you. So TVS, who's trusted, SST, who's trusted, says that they should do it. They all are happy to do it. So we played quite an important catalytic role during that time, other than directly giving help.
Thank you so much for your time, Venu.
Thank you. Thank you, Anjana.
Venu, thank you so much for taking us through all the stories about the trust. It's been a real pleasure.